Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DiCecco's here on the day after the Eagles' schedule has been released. A lot of quirks to this schedule. No back-to-back home games, so Andrew doesn't have to spend 2 weeks in a row at Lincoln Financial Field, man. What's happening? How are you, pal?
Hey, I'm doing well, pal. How are you?
All is good, man. It's good to talk to you. Always love chopping up some football with you. Saw the schedule. Obviously, no back-to-back home games. There's a quirk in it right there, right? You don't get these like, hey, couple weeks you get to settle in, be home, and get a couple games at home. So this is going to be a very daunting, challenging, twisting and turning type of schedule this year.
Yeah, initially when I was going through it, the first thing that popped out obviously was the lack of consecutive home games. And obviously that's something that's pretty challenging. I also think that opening the season with Dallas is a little bit of a curious selection there. Usually you have to earn the right to be the team that is playing the defending Super Bowl champions on opening night. But that's the way it goes, and the Eagles have, at least on paper, a favorable Week 1 matchup, and that should allow them to settle into the flow of the season. And, Mike, it's a really tough schedule, and I think that obviously the bye week at Week 9 is something that I made note of because last season a lot was made of them having the earlier bye week, and it turns out that was crucial to their success and propelling them forward. They were able to hit that reset button and get on the same page and kind of reconfigure their strategy. But I think at Week 9, based on what you're seeing, they have games with the Packers and the Lions coming off that bye week. I think that's going to be critical to getting a lot of players healthy at that juncture of the season.
Yeah, that ninth week is the bye week, as you point out there, and it's an interesting spot because they play the Giants, the Vikings, the Giants. Division games 2 out of 3 weeks, and they close the year, Andrew. I don't know that I've ever seen this. You may have done the research or maybe know off the – I have never seen a team have to play the team that was in the NFC Championship game and in the AFC Championship game in 3 consecutive weeks. They're going to have to go on the road to Washington, Buffalo, and then Washington again. Now, the interesting part about the placement of these games is they could mean the division, or Washington could be completely out of it, and Buffalo could have everything wrapped up. So right now it looks like, wow, you've got to play the runners-up in your conference 3 straight weeks, but you could also be at a time of the schedule where those games have little meaning.
Yeah, as far as do I know if that's the first time or anything like that, I wouldn't be the one to ask. I don't know about those schedule quirks. I'm more of the football guy. But what I will say is it's very interesting because that Buffalo game, I've had it highlighted as one of the games I was most looking forward to going to, and that it's late December. That's a frigid temperature is one of the most daunting places to play at that point in the season, and you may not be playing for much at that point, Mike. Neither team, so you have to wonder about the quality of that game, and then the Commanders playing the Commanders, twice in the span of 3 weeks. I think is, I probably would have spaced it out. That's going to be a highly anticipated matchup, and you're pushing it all the way to the back end of the season. And I think that you want to try and see both teams matched up when you know for sure, or you have a better idea that they're going to be at full strength. So I don't quite like how that back end of the season really plays out.
Yeah, that one's a little that's a rough go there. You got a Green Bay, Detroit, Dallas, Chicago Chargers run there. So there's another run right after the bye of teams that, look, Green Bay, you beat in the playoffs. Detroit, they would like to play you because they think they were the better team if not injury. Dallas, we know, is a division game. The Bears are an up-and-coming team. And that Chargers team, another playoff team from last year. All in their cross-division games, Andrew, of the 8 teams they play, 6 of them are playoff teams. So not only is it a challenging, kind of ride through this, the level of opponent this year is significantly better than last year.
Yeah, it sure is, and that's the cost that you pay when you are the defending Super Bowl champions. And I have a story actually coming out, should be later today, where I kind of go through each game. I sort of give a synopsis on what I'm expecting and why I lean one way or the other. And coming out of that bye, Mike, I have the Eagles losing, spoiler alert, to the Packers. I have them winning at home against the Lions, and then I have them winning again, flying out to the West Coast and playing the Chargers. But that Packers game, as you mentioned, that could be really tough because the Packers are coming off a game where they're hosting the lowly Carolina Panthers, so that they should be flying high off of that. And the Eagles have an extended rest period, the bye week, and then they're playing that Monday night. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, looking at some of the quirks and some of the interesting parts. What do you think about getting the Super Bowl rematch right there at the start, Week 2, on the road, Kansas City, September 14th?
Yeah, I'm not crazy about that. I would like to see that game at least, from the reporter in me later in the season, where you can build up that storyline. You have a better idea of what both teams are at that point, and to kind of have that, it's kind of like the Phillies and the Phillies playing the Dodgers as early as they have. You would like to see them August or September play that team. So it kind of, there's not going to be much of a build up there, but I'm not sure what you can glean out of that game in a Week 2 matchup, where the Eagles have to go out to Kansas City in a raucous crowd and that type of environment. But yeah, I'm not, that game doesn't have the same allure to me as it would if it were, placed in the middle of the season.
Yeah, you got Dallas, as you mentioned, to start. Then you got Kansas City. Then you got a divisional round rematch with the Rams. So Kansas City.
I love that. Yeah.
So you got Kansas City, Rams, and at Tampa, which has been like a house of horrors for you. That's a 3-week stretch right there, followed by a Broncos team that's seemingly on the way up there. So that's an interesting 4-game stretch right off the bat there. And whether you think Dallas is, ready to take that step or not, that's a division game. So Dallas, Chiefs, Rams on the road at Tampa, Denver, that's a pretty daunting start.
Yeah, it sure is. And when I look at that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, Mike, obviously, like you said, it's been a house of horrors going out to Raymond James Stadium. At that point in the season, it is going to be extremely hot, and that's something to take into account as well. Todd Bowles and his coaching staff, Larry Foote, and the guys that they have on that coaching staff on the defensive side, do a really good job of conjuring a game plan to try and bottle up a prolific Eagles offense, and I would expect that to continue. But when I look at that Broncos game, as I'm sort of assessing the schedule, to me, when you look at how the season could unfold in the early going, I think that's the game at home, 1 o'clock, the Broncos game. They're sort of one of those oppositions that you may not think much of. I think that's where the Eagles are going to start to hit their stride. Sometimes it takes a few weeks, because really September is, whether you like it or not, it is viewed as the extension of the preseason in the NFL. So I do believe that game at home against the Broncos at 1 o'clock is going to be where you really start to see what the Eagles are all about.
Well, they didn't get the 2 big holidays, the Thanksgiving and the Christmas Day games, but they did get another standalone game on a Friday. Do you like being in that 3 o'clock Black Friday window?
Yeah, it's a good compromise, because we don't have to work Thanksgiving or Christmas, and Black Friday's fine. I mean, it'll be cool and interesting to cover a game on a Friday at 3 o'clock. And the opposition I find them to be pretty interesting, because the Bears are an upstart team with Caleb Williams at the helmet quarterback. They have Rome Odunze at wide receiver. They drafted Luther Burden. They drafted Colston Level in the tight end. So there's a lot of young pieces there. DeAndre Swift at running back. And that's a team I can't wait to see how they fare. But I think they're too young to really make much of an impact. I'm not saying the Eagles can kind of sleepwalk through that game, but that's a game where I think the Eagles are going to showcase their veteran prowess and, their penchant for winning, and really put that team away. But it will be interesting to cover a game on a Friday for sure.
And that division's brutal too. All 4 teams in that division have an over-under win total of 9.5 or right around there. So it's 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, 8.5. I mean, right there, that's going to be a very competitive division. Philly's got to play all 4. You got that game against Detroit 2 weeks before that. So Green Bay, Detroit, and Chicago, you got to play them 3 out of 4 weeks in there. You got Minnesota right up there as well. We took a look at a lot of teams. You mentioned something about the Rams. When I mentioned the Rams in week 3, they're going to come across the country here where they were last year in that playoff game. But that's a team I think is improved as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be a good measuring stick type of game, Mike, because they came within a Jalen Carter pressure from potentially knocking the Eagles out of the postseason. Going from the West Coast to the East Coast, that's always a challenging proposition for any team. But I'm curious to see how the Eagles answer that, because they have a young secondary. They have someone who I believe is going to start in safety, and we'll have to see who starts at corner, opposite Quinyon Mitchell. But they're going against a prolific passing attack, which obviously includes Puka Nacua. And I'm curious to see how they're able to kind of navigate that, because the Rams do a wonderful job of having a lot of moving parts to their offense. I think that'll be a really good gauge as to how some of these younger players are grasping the defense early on. And by the way, it'll be the return of Britton Covey, by the way, who signed with the Rams about a week ago.
Yeah, they also got Devontae Adams as well out there. Who They changed the Cooper Kupp. They flipped him out, brought in Adams, so different look to their passing game as well. All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, InsideTheBirds.com. You wrote a piece a couple days ago about your 53. There's a couple names that stood out to me that I want to get your take on. One, Danny Gray is one of the 5 receivers on the team. I'm not sure too many people know who Danny Gray is, but you think he might make the 53.
I do, and I don't view it as a hot take because when you really look at it, Mike, beyond the top 3 receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jahan Dotson, nobody really should be considered a lock. Johnny Wilson, he's your blocking receiver. He's, again, entering his second season. They're probably going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Anaya Smith is a slot-only receiver, and if he can't help you as a punt returner, he's going to be given that opportunity. But if he can't help you there, he's sort of one-dimensional. I don't know that you can really count on that. Danny Gray, it was a third-round pick in 2022 of the 49ers. I actually interviewed him for my Draft Dream series a few years ago, and he can absolutely fly. He runs a 4.3. He can play inside. He can play outside, which is key here. And everything that I've gathered last season, talking to different players, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Slay, they all mentioned how much Danny Gray was really making them work in practice, how he was oftentimes getting the better of them. And I remember talking to Danny, and he had a couple routes where he beat Cooper DeJean, and I said, "Are you a quiet guy, or do you let it? Do you kind of let them know about it?" He goes, "Oh, I let them know about it." And believe me, if I was here in training camp, I would have made the 53 because I'm not arrogant or anything. I just know what I bring to the table.
Okay, keep an eye on Danny Gray for the people out there. The other spot I thought interesting, only 2 tight ends, Goddard and Calcaterra. All this talk, they brought in Bryant, Keelan Granson, and you think only the 2 guys that were here last year will make the team.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that, Mike, is because I don't know that you want to just keep 3 tight ends just for the sake of doing so, especially on the defensive side. There are some key young players that I think you might want to find room for to develop. And we talked about the pendulum swinging. Eventually, you're going to have to start paying your defensive guys. So it would behoove the Eagles, in my opinion, to stockpile some of these younger players that show some ability. But 2 tight ends. I mean, Grant Calcaterra is a fine number 2. Harrison Bryant, Kylan Granson, E.J. Jenkins. We'll have to wait and see. I think you can probably get 2 of the 3, if not all of them, on the practice squad, especially because teams are less likely to try and bring in a player who spent all summer in the offseason learning another offense. So they can't really help you in the immediate future. So it gives them an opportunity to get on the practice squad, and you can elevate them and then eventually sign them and then go heavy elsewhere.
Okay, there's a couple other quirks now on defense. Stick around, everybody, because here comes some big ones. Number 1, you do not have Uche making this team as an edge guy.
Yeah, I've been underwhelmed, and with him over the past couple of years, Mike, and then really I've been underwhelmed when you have to go back to 2022 to go to his most prolific season. I think he's sort of become the player that he really is. He's a situational player. He doesn't really give you much against the run. And if you're comparing him to a player like an Antoine Powell-Ryland, who the Eagles drafted and has a little bit more upside perhaps, I think the Eagles are going to lean in favor of the draft pick. And Bryce Huff, with that contract, he's going to be tough to move. So he has that albatross of a contract. So barring something unforeseen, he's going to be on the roster unless they're able to move him. So it's tough to find a spot for Uche, and I just don't. I'm not in love with the player and his fit really in that defense.
All right, the last one, Dean starting on the PUP list. So it sounds like you think he might not be ready to go at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's such a gruesome injury, and we don't quite know what the timeline is yet. If it were up to Dean, he said he'd be ready for week 1, but it's not up to the player, and that's an injury that does take some time. So I think, in good faith, and I put a lot of time and effort into these 53s, you have to take that into consideration. And it's really hard to foresee Dean being available to start the season, but he will be able to help the Eagles in all likelihood at some point early-ish in the season. But they're going to be really light there at off-ball linebacker to start. They're going to lean heavily on Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and let's not forget, Jahai Campbell might be a little limited because we don't yet know his availability for training camp. He had the shoulder surgery in March, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on. It would behoove the Eagles, in my opinion, to add a veteran linebacker to add some competition there in training camp, or just really have somebody there to undertake some reps.
Andrew DiCecco, everybody, Football at 4. Check out his full 53-man roster over at InsideTheBirds.com. He's got other great content over there you're going to want to check out, of course, all throughout this offseason. And right here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, my brother, I'll see you soon.
Mike, take care, man.